Dust coated the small town of Redemption, Arizona, like a heavy veil, mirroring the desperation clinging to John Maverick's skin. His family's ranch, once thriving, now teetered on the brink of collapse. The relentless drought had decimated his cattle, and debts piled up like insurmountable mountains. John, a man of few words and deep-set wrinkles on his brow, watched the cattle auction with a knot in his stomach. There were no buyers, only resignation in the eyes of the other ranchers. Suddenly, the crowd stirred. It wasn't cattle being auctioned, but a young girl, no older than 15, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to carry the sorrow of an entire world. The auctioneer, a corpulent man with a cynical grin, bellowed, "Who bids for the Witch of Silver? Creek? She brings bad luck wherever she goes. For 1 gold coin we'll rid this town of a blight." Murmurs of fear and contempt echoed through the square. John felt a shiver. Superstition was strong in the West, and accusations of witchcraft meant condemnation. But seeing the terror in the girl's eyes, something in him broke. Perhaps it was his own hopelessness recognizing itself in her, or the memory of his own sister, long lost to a fever. In an irrational impulse, he raised his hand. 5 gold coins. A shocked silence fell over the square. The auctioneer hesitated, but the offer was irresistible. The girl, thin and dust-covered, was pushed towards John. She didn't express gratitude, only a blank, almost defiant stare. John led her to his wagon, feeling the town's disapproving and suspicious gazes burn into his back. Night fell upon them, bringing a cold wind that howled like an omen. Back at the ranch, the old house felt even emptier. John's younger sister, Sarah, 12 years old and eagerly awaiting him, ran to greet him. Her curious eyes fixed on the girl. "Who is she, John?" John introduced her with a certain discomfort. "This is Ilara." Ilara said nothing, merely observing her surroundings with a wild caution like a cornered animal. Sarah, however, approached with disarming innocence, offering her a piece of bread. The tension between John and Ilara was palpable. He didn't know what to do with her, nor how to explain his impulsive decision. The accusations of witchcraft weighed heavily, even if he dismissed them. The truth was, he had little to offer beyond a crumbling roof and the uncertain promise of a future. He looked up at the stars, which shone with glacial indifference over the desert. He knew that from that moment on, his family's life would never be the same. Buying Ilara wasn't just an act of charity, it was a desperate gamble against fate, life. At the Maverick Ranch settled into an uneasy rhythm. The days were long and hot, the sun beating down mercilessly on the parched land. John worked from dawn till dusk, trying to salvage what little was left of his cattle, his movements heavy with fatigue. Ilara, initially withdrawn and silent, began to observe the routines of the ranch. Her eyes, once vacant, now held a keen, analytical gaze as she watched John mend fences or Sarah tend to the few chickens. The town's whispers about her being a witch reached them, carried on the wind like a poisonous dust, making every trip to Redemption a gauntlet of suspicious stares and hushed conversations. John did his best to ignore it, but the isolation was a heavy burden, pressing down on him and his small family. Sarah, however, was a beacon of light. Her genuine curiosity and unwavering kindness slowly chipped away at Ilara's icy exterior. Sarah would follow Ilara, asking simple questions about her past, about the distant town of Silver Creek, without judgment. Ilara, hesitant at first, eventually began to offer fragmented answers, mostly about the harsh life she had known, a life of constant fear and misunderstanding. She spoke of her grandmother, a quiet woman who knew much about herbs and natural remedies, knowledge that had been twisted into accusations of dark magic by fearful townsfolk. Through these halting conversations, a fragile bond began to form between the two girls, a silent understanding built on shared solitude. One sweltering afternoon, disaster struck. A wild horse, spooked by a rattlesnake, bolted through a section of weakened fence, heading straight for the dwindling herd. John shouted, but his leg, injured years ago, buckled. Just as the horse was about to scatter the cattle into the unforgiving desert, Ilara moved with astonishing speed. She didn't try to stop the horse physically, but instead picked up a fallen branch, expertly throwing it to strike a specific, resonant spot on a nearby hollow log. The sudden, deep thud startled the wild horse, causing it to veer sharply and rejoin the herd without causing a stampede. John watched in disbelief, his breath catching in his throat. It was not magic, but quick thinking and an uncanny understanding of sound and animal behavior. Later that evening, as the last rays of sun painted the sky in fiery hues, John found Ilara mending a broken bucket with surprising dexterity. "That was impressive today," he mumbled, a rare admission from him. Ilara simply nodded, her expression unreadable. But a subtle shift had occurred. John saw not a witch, but a resourceful, intelligent young woman. The incident, far from supernatural, showed a practical ingenuity that was invaluable on a struggling ranch. A flicker of hope ignited within John, a tiny spark in the vast darkness that surrounded his family's name. Perhaps, just perhaps, she wasn't a burden, but something else entirely. As the scorching summer days bled into weeks, a quiet transformation began to take root on the Maverick Ranch. Ilara, no longer just a silent presence, started actively contributing, her observations proving remarkably insightful. She noticed the subtle signs of impending dust storms before they gathered on the horizon, advising John on which sections of fence needed immediate reinforcement. Her knowledge of local plants, gleaned from her grandmother, proved invaluable when a sickness spread through the remaining cattle. She knew which herbs could soothe their symptoms and which natural remedies could prevent further infection, not through any mystical power, but through a deep, almost innate understanding of the land and its resources. John, initially skeptical, saw the tangible results and slowly, grudgingly, began to trust her judgment. The bond between Ilara and Sarah deepened into a genuine sisterhood. Sarah, ever curious and open-hearted, spent hours listening to Ilara's stories of Silver Creek, not the fearful whispers of witchcraft, but the everyday struggles and small joys of a close-knit, albeit superstitious community. Ilara, in turn, found solace in Sarah's unwavering acceptance, sharing her fears of being constantly hunted and misunderstood. Sarah would often sit with Ilara as she meticulously prepared herbal poultices or cleaned out the chicken coop, asking questions, learning and seeing beyond the town's cruel labels. This innocent friendship was a powerful antidote to the isolation, reminding Ilara that kindness still existed in the world. One evening, a group of ranchers from Redemption, fueled by whiskey and old superstitions, rode up to the Maverick Ranch. Their faces were grim, their eyes narrowed with suspicion. "We heard you've got the witch here, John," one of them slurred, his hand hovering over his holster. "She's cursed our lands, too. We've seen the signs." The air crackled with tension. John stepped forward, placing himself protectively in front of Ilara and Sarah. "There's no witch here, just a girl who's helped me save what little I have left," he stated, his voice firm, though his heart pounded in his chest. Ilara, instead of shrinking back, stepped out from behind John. Her voice, usually quiet, carried an unexpected strength. "I've cursed no one," she said, her gaze steady. "I've only offered help where I could. Your lands are dry because the riverbeds are shifting and the wells are running low. The old ways of digging won't work anymore." She pointed towards a distant ridge. "There's water, deeper down if you know where to look, in the place where the old man used to say, 'The wind sings to the rocks.'" Her words, grounded in observation rather than magic, offered a practical explanation for their woes. The ranchers, taken aback by her directness and the unexpected knowledge, exchanged uneasy glances. They hadn't expected a rational argument, only a fearful witch. The moment passed, their anger diffused by her calm conviction and the simple truth in her words. The group eventually rode off, leaving behind a lingering doubt about their easy accusations and, for the first time, a glimmer of respect for the witch. The incident with the ranchers, while initially unsettling, ironically served to cement Ilara's place on the Maverick Ranch. John, having witnessed her courage and practical wisdom, felt a profound shift in his perception. He saw beyond the accusations and into the core of a resilient young woman. He began to consult her on ranch matters, trusting her insights on water sources, animal health, and even the best times for planting, her observations often proving more accurate than his own long-held beliefs. It was a silent acknowledgement of her value, a quiet apology for his initial prejudices. Ilara, in turn, relaxed further into the routine of the ranch, her guardedness slowly replaced by a sense of belonging, a feeling she had never known. The laughter of Sarah became a daily comfort, a reminder that she had found a true home. One afternoon, as a fierce sandstorm raged, forcing them indoors, John found an old, tattered ledger belonging to his grandfather. It contained cryptic notes about the ranch's original water rights and ancient boundary lines, vital information that had been lost over the decades. He struggled to decipher the faded script and fragmented maps. Ilara, seeing his frustration, quietly took the ledger. Her eyes, accustomed to scrutinizing natural patterns and faint tracks, quickly picked up on subtle details John had missed. She pointed to a series of symbols that seemed to align with local rock formations, indicating an old, forgotten underground spring, a hidden source of water that could potentially save the ranch. It was a moment of profound revelation, not magic, but the unearthing of forgotten knowledge, waiting for the right person to discover it. The implications were monumental. If they could tap into this hidden spring, their water problems would be solved, and the ranch, the very legacy of the Maverick family, could be saved from the clutches of ruin. John, with Ilara's detailed guidance, began the arduous task of digging. Days turned into weeks of back-breaking labor under the relentless sun. Sarah helped where she could, bringing water and offering encouragement. Neighbors, having heard rumors of the witch's peculiar insights, watched with a mixture of skepticism and a burgeoning hope, their own wells running dry. The community was divided, some mocking John's foolishness, others silently wishing him success. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of digging, they hit water. A gush, clear and life-giving, erupted from the earth, filling the air with the sound of hope. It wasn't a trickle, but a steady flow, enough to sustain the entire ranch. The news spread like wildfire through Redemption. The accusations of witchcraft faded, replaced by awe and a grudging respect. John Maverick, the struggling rancher, had not only saved his land, but, with Ilara's quiet wisdom, had revitalized the very name of his family. The witch had proven to be the family's savior, not through dark arts, but through an acute understanding of the land and a keen, observant mind. The discovery of the new spring transformed the Maverick Ranch. Lush green patches of grass slowly began to replace the dry, cracked earth, and the cattle, now with ample water, thrived. The ranch, once a symbol of decline, became a beacon of resilience in the parched landscape of Redemption. John, his shoulders lighter than they had been in years, looked at Ilara with an gratitude that transcended words. She had not only saved his livelihood but had restored hope to his family. The townspeople, witnessing the undeniable proof of the flourishing ranch, slowly began to shed their superstitions. The witch of Silver Creek was now seen as a bringer of fortune, her knowledge respected rather than feared. Ilara, for the first time in her life, experienced true acceptance. She was no longer an outcast, a hunted creature, but an integral part of the Maverick family. Sarah clung to her, a constant source of joy and unwavering affection. John, in his quiet way, became a fierce protector, ready to defend Ilara against any lingering prejudice. The empty silence of the ranch house was replaced by the sounds of laughter, the rhythmic creak of the well, and the lowing of healthy cattle. The loneliness that had long settled on John's heart finally began to dissipate, replaced by a quiet contentment born of shared purpose and genuine affection. The changes extended beyond the ranch. Other ranchers, desperate for water, cautiously approached John, seeking Ilara's advice. She, with John's encouragement, shared her knowledge, teaching them how to read the subtle signs of the land, guiding them to potential new water sources. She didn't claim magic, but simply explained the natural patterns, the flow of underground streams, and the indicators in the flora and fauna. Slowly, the entire region began to recover, turning a collective tide against the drought that had plagued them for so long. Ilara's wisdom, once condemned, was now celebrated, bringing prosperity and renewed life to the very people who had once persecuted her. The Maverick family name, which had been on the verge of disappearing, was not only saved but elevated. John Maverick was known not just as a survivor, but as a visionary, a man who had seen past prejudice and embraced an extraordinary insight. Ilara, once the hunted girl, found her true calling, not as a solitary figure, but as a quiet force for good, a testament to the power of understanding over fear. The sun rose each day over a revitalized landscape, illuminating a future where compassion, knowledge, and an unwavering belief in humanity had triumphed over ignorance and superstition. The story of the struggling rancher and the witch he abhorred became a legend in the West, a testament to the unexpected ways in which true salvation can be found, changing not just a family, but an entire community.